Welcome to a top 5 video, and today we are looking into the 5 most unreplayable factions in all of Total War. 1 or 2 weeks ago we did the most replayable factions, but now it's time for the unreplayable ones. These are campaigns that are just simply dull, rosters that feel repetitive, or campaigns that simply are just not replayable. You've played it once and you've sort of done everything. Those types of campaigns. Now, starting this list off is going to be from Rome Total War, and it's number 5, and it's actually the Julii, and I hate to put this on here, because I actually do kind of like the Julii. I've played it many times over. For me, it has been replayable, but that's only because every time I go to the Julii, it's just the faction I play when I've learnt something new. Like, that's my experiment faction to try stuff out. For example, my first ever game was as the Julii, then I tried the Julii again because, I've learned more about Total War, like how can I do it better, and then in 3 months' time I came back to the Julii, taking into consideration everything else that I'd learned, and I come back to this faction, so to me it is replayable, but I'm only doing it to prove to myself okay, how much have I learned, how much can I do it better this time? It's sort of that faction. That's why I've played it a lot, but I've got to be honest, it is very unreplayable and it can certainly get very dull. For one very simple reason, and that's because of its neighbours. The main neighbour at the north is the Gauls, but where do you go after the Gauls? Brutii, they've got the Greeks and the Macedonians, but then they're crossing into Anatolia and it's more unique factions. Seleucid Empire, Pontus, the Egyptians, maybe Thracians and Dacians fighting some barbarians up there. Every battle, every faction, every culture is unique. But with the Julii, you fight a barbarian faction in the Gauls, then the Germans, another barbarian faction, the British, the Iberians, it's all barbarians, and it does certainly get very repetitive. That's the only reason they're on 5th. I don't like putting them here, but yeah, I think we do have to go here. They are not that replayable. Number 4, and I've gone with Attila Total War and any Celtic faction. Those that start in Britain, so there's the Picts, the Caledonians and the Ebdanians. These factions are not that replayable. The main problem is that they are limited in their start. Step 1 is to always conquer Britain, and once you've done that, you've got quite a few settlements under your banners at that point. The game's fairly easy after that. But, that's the main issue, because England in Medieval 2, the first step is to conquer Britain, but there's other options available as well. You can get rid of the Danish, stop them from raiding, you can push into France, maybe crusade, maybe don't crusade, it's up to you. There's many other different directions to go in, but as any of these Celtic factions, step 1 is to always take Britain, and once you've done that, you've got quite a good economic base, quite a good military base, you're fine to move out, and you probably won't come into that much trouble. The campaign gets too easy after that point. So yeah, it doesn't matter which of the 3 Celtic factions you play as in Northern Britain, either way the experience is going to be very similar. Number 3, and I've gone with Napoleon Total War's Egypt campaign, playing as the French. Now, when playing as France in the Egypt campaign, which is also the only faction you can play as, unless you have Darth mod, it's not that replayable, it does get very repetitive, and the main issue is on the campaign, because there's no unique route to take. You cannot really get onto a boat and sail and attack from the north instead. No, step 1 is to move south and conquer Egypt, and then move on to the Ottomans. And it's sort of designed some predestined route that you have to take every time. It does certainly make for a good, fun, playable campaign, but because you can't approach it really too differently, you can do it a bit differently, but it's not, the general direction is always going to be the same. It takes away a lot of replayability, and I'm going to talk a lot more about that with first place, which you can probably guess which one first place is. Number 2, and I've gone with Shogun 2 Total War. Yep, that's a faction. That is the second most unreplayable faction. Shogun 2 Total War. I know a lot of Shogun 2 fans are going to be very annoyed, but overall, what my opinion is, I don't like their unit rosters. From north to south, they're all identical. It's all Yari Spearmen, whatever they're actually called, archers and stuff. All the units are the same. There's some differences here and there, but generally speaking, it's all the same. Unlike at least Thrones of Britannia, you know, you got Viking factions, you got your English, you got your Scots, and they do have very different rosters. But with Shogun 2, you don't really get any of that. Which is, you know, historical, I understand it, but it does make it very unreplayable. And it's the only reason why I've only ever played 2 or 3 serious Let's Plays of it. So yeah, second place, literally any Shogun 2 faction. I was about to say last but not least, but then I remembered the title of this video. Last and least, the most unreplayable faction in all of Total War is, of course, Macedon in Alexander Total War, the Rome Total War expansion. And for the same reasons why the Napoleon Egypt campaign is here. There's only one set route. The map, although it looks horrible, is perfectly designed to force you into one route. There's some points here and there where you can mix it up a bit, but generally speaking, you know, it's all predestined for you, predetermined. There's only one real way you can expand, and that is very annoying. I don't like that about the game, but at the same time it does make sense. Because it wants you to follow the story of Alexander. So I do like the game for it, and I don't like the game for it. It makes for a very interesting first playthrough, and maybe a second in a few years' time, but it's not something you can come back to every single day. It's like, once I finish a Rome Total War campaign, I'll be perfectly happy to jump back into that game and play as another faction, but this game doesn't have it. It's one faction, one set route, and that's all. And as with most of my videos, I do like to put a bit of a hidden meaning into them. And it's going to be a talk again about Total War Troy, and any future Total War really. To not fall into the same trap that Alexander fell into, of having one predetermined route. And my worry with Troy, or any future title, or Alexander 2 Total War possibly, is, you know, let's use Troy as an example. I don't want it to be a very simple set route to take to Troy, and then go back home, and then you're done. Because that's not replayable at all, it'd be a predetermined route. What Total War Troy and Alexander 2 and future titles need to do that are trying to tell a story is add something a bit more. And I think the perfect way to do that is shown in Attila Total War. Attila Total War is sort of, in a way, you know, it's about Attila, the Huns invading, the story of Attila, like Alexander Total War. But it's not Attila Total War, it's more than Attila Total War. Attila's not even there at the start, it starts a bit earlier. And that's something that Troy or Alexander 2 or whatever can take into consideration. Something that they can learn from. You know, just because it's got them in the name doesn't mean that's 100% of the game. Same, I guess, with Napoleon Total War as well. You know, they could have quite easily forced to play it into a story path of Napoleon, but they didn't. The coalition factions are playable. The map is much more expanded. There's some things that are going to happen, like some set events, but overall, you know, you're free to make your own history. And I really want Total War Troy and other future titles to be about that. Whereas with Alexander, the reason it's on first place, you know, you can't do that unless you die. You know, you either complete the history or you fail. There's no other way around it. And on top of that, another complaint I've got about Alexander Total War, which I completely forgot to mention, is the battles. You know, it's all phalanx, cav, and archers. You get your phalanxes in a line, you get your archers behind, mess around, maybe kill the general at the start with the cavalry, pull back, and then every single battle is the exact same. Oh, it gets so repetitive and dull eventually. But it is how it is. Hope you enjoyed this video. I've been MELKOR. Subscribe for more. Share with anyone you think would be interested. It really helps me grow. Until the next one, goodbye.